Chapter 811. The Land of Elements 2. Puff. Smoke drifted in the air. A figure stood by a balcony, his gaze hovering towards the busy streets below. The cars were sparse, and a certain quiet hovered across the surroundings. But that quiet didn't last for long. I feel like we're being watched. A voice echoed from behind him. Emmett didn't react at all, his eyes turning slightly hazy as he continued to stare at the cars beneath. It's not just that we're being watched. It's like they know our every move, almost as if they can read our thoughts. How is this possible? Do you think that someone has betrayed us? Puff. Emmett drew another drag of the cigarette, feeling the afterburn linger at the back of his throat before he closed his eyes and drew out the smoke from his lungs. Eventually, his lips parted. You're not wrong. They can read our thoughts. But only to those they've set their targets on. Emmett's voice was cold as he spoke. His face showed no emotion, and his eyes turned hazier with each passing second. Speaking about them will also attract their attention. Puff. They've also started to spread their influence across the entire world. Their intentions are clear. They want to suppress us. But what should we do? The voice from behind shook. One could feel the fear that lingered deep within the voice. To the question, Emmett remained silent. Puff. He took another drag of the cigarette before blowing it in the air. Learn how to act. What does that? Puff. Drawing the last drag from the cigarette, Emmett tossed it away from the balcony as he turned to look at the young man who stood before him. Emmett's hazy eyes swept over him before he walked forward and slid the glass door of the balcony to the side. Immerse yourself in the role. What role? Emmett paused, his fingers twitching as he felt the urge to take another cigarette out. However, he just barely held himself back. Eventually, he answered, your role as a god. The surroundings turned silent. The world is now your theater. They are your spectators. Become someone you are not and hide your thoughts from them. That's the only way to slip past their gaze. But of course, Emmett took a step into the room, closing the door behind him. Don't lose yourself in that role. The Land of Elements was a lot bigger than the Land of Light. Not only did it span the entire region that had once been part of Russia, but it also extended far beyond. Each domain contained several major cities, and Isilra was one of them. Known as the City of Ice, a major part of its infrastructure was built from thick ice. The other known cities within the Land of Elements were Kyrant, City of Fire, Mirage, City of Wind, Rienhord, City of Earth, Capensaint, City of Light, and Surtromer, City of Dark. There were many other notable cities, but these were the more well-known cities according to Anne. Of course, that included Isilra. I get that it's supposed to be a city of ice, but why the hell is it so damn cold? Evelyn's voice trembled as she spoke. Even with a thin layer of mana shielding her body, the cold still managed to seep through, biting at her skin. The others weren't much better off. I could feel the same sharp prickle crawling across my own body from the freezing air. There's something about the cold over here. It's slowly eating at my mana reserves, Leon pointed out while looking at the surroundings. The thin layer of mana that covered his body grew thinner and thinner. He quickly followed up by adding more mana, and only then did it stabilize. Yes, there's something about the chill in the air that eats away at the person's mana. I've never heard of something like this happening before. Did something happen? Anne's words were filled with doubt. As a pirate, she was most likely aware of the geography around the Crimson Sea better than anyone else. For her to say this, it was most likely the truth. I think I've got a good idea as to why the situation is like this. It most likely had to do with Chlora's absence. The mirror dimension was known for its extreme weather. However, given how many cities thrived in her domain, she most likely played a role in keeping the weather from becoming too extreme. Her sudden presence most likely shattered that balance. I don't see a lot of people either. I looked around. We stood at the city's port, and aside from us, not a single soul could be seen in this vast city of ice. It felt abandoned, eerily still, but on closer look, there were remnants of life, empty merchant stalls left behind, faint traces of activity, and bits of trash scattered across the frozen ground. Getting off the ship and picking up a piece of the trash, I frowned. It's frozen stiff. No, everything was. I guess it's no wonder there's no one else present. Kira got off the ship, rubbing her hands together as a small flame formed. That's a little bit better. Hey, let me get some. Evelyn tried to push herself closer to the flames, but was pushed away by Kira. Fuck off, Do you think I'm some walking heater? Use your lightning or some shit. Stop. Why are you being so stingy? It's just a little bit of heat. No means no. Evelyn grit her teeth, turning her attention towards the little girl who walked next to the silent Aoife. She smiled sweetly. Teresa dear, do you remember all the times when I allowed you to watch Justice Man in secret? All the snacks that I've given you? Would you mind giving me some heat? Evelyn did her best to guilt-trip the little girl, bringing up old favors and past kindnesses, but to her surprise, Teresa only looked back at her with a faint smirk. Huh, did she just? Keck, Kira giggled to herself, staring at the little girl and giving her a thumbs up. Good one, I'm glad to see you're learning from me. The best things are meant to be kept for yourself. There's no need to share them with anyone else. Teresa gave the same ridiculing laugh to Kira, prompting her to frown. What's that supposed to mean? Teresa just kept laughing with the same smirk. Suddenly, both looked at Aoife. What have you been teaching her? What did you do to her during the time we were gone? Aoife frowned while feeling their gazes. Don't look at me like that. I had nothing to do with this. That's bullshit. You were the one taking care of her, not us. Aoife's frown deepened, but she chose not to respond, closing her mouth and holding back any retort. However, Kira's next words made her lips twitch despite herself. She's like this because of you. She's practically a spitting image of you now. You're a terrible influence. Regardless of how much she had changed, Aoife was still Aoife at heart. The moment she was attacked like this, she exploded. What do you mean she took from me? Do you see me laughing like this? I've never laughed like this in my life. If anything, she probably took that crappy laugh from you. You laugh like some deranged witch. Have you ever heard yourself laugh? The hell you say? Wow, chill you too. It's not that deep. Shut up. What did you say? And so, the three of them began to bicker. Despite all the time that had passed and how much they'd grown, they were still the same at heart. I couldn't help but let out a quiet sigh. But that wasn't the main problem. Staring at the little girl who was watching the entire fight unfold, fanning the flames with hers. Just what am I even watching? I think this is good. I turned to look at Leon, who watched the scene in silence. Looking at him, I couldn't help but think he had also lost his mind. How was this good? The three were acting stupidly for no reason. Anaz and Anne were also staring at the scene speechlessly. I didn't need to read their thoughts to know what they were thinking. What the hell is this? Are they really fighting over a little girl? Yeah, this is good. After a moment, Leon shifted his gaze back towards me. You weren't here, so you wouldn't know, but in the 3 years you were gone, I hardly ever saw any of the three smile or even argue like this. Sure, they were caught up in their own things, but with each passing day, they just seemed to grow gloomier and more distant. In the rare times that they did meet, they'd only talk for a few moments before leaving. I don't know, it felt a little off. It was almost as if they were becoming completely different people. For a moment, I didn't know how to reply. Indeed, I had never truly seen how much the three had changed during my disappearance. I knew for a fact that they had all been forced to change due to the circumstances that followed my absence, and neither of them probably ever had the time to relax. Maybe that's also what accelerated the calamity meter. This is the first time in quite a while that I'm seeing them return to how they were. At the very least, Leon's gaze paused over Aoife as she grew louder and louder, Teresa standing beside her with her now trademark smirk. At the very least, Aoife looks to be reverting to how she was in the past. I don't think that's a bad thing. Is that so? I also looked at Leon. Ever since coming back, I also noticed that Leon had changed a lot. He was a lot calmer than he had been in the past. There was a certain calmness to him that made me feel calm as well. I guess I really did miss out a lot while I was gone. I sighed at the thought, but decided to brush those thoughts aside for now. There was no time for dwelling on the past. The past was the past. What mattered was the present. Turning my gaze back to the massive city, I took in the towering structures coated in ice, their spires jutting toward the gray sky above. Strengthening the layer of mana around my body, I ignored the girls' chatter and began making my way toward the city. Right, I can't think too much about the past. Let me see if I can find some information regarding Delilah and the situation within this domain. Chapter 812, The City of Frozen People 1. Crack. The ice beneath our feet cracked with each step that we took. As we ventured deeper into the city, the towering landmarks loomed beside us, their shadows stretching wide across the frozen streets. With every step forward, the air grew colder, biting my skin sharply. The infrastructure was very different from that in the Land of Light, which had a more gloomy, Gothic design. The buildings here looked a little more modern, or at least more like the past where I came from. The streets were also quite large, and although now deserted, shops appeared in all directions. Where are we heading? Upon hearing Anne's question, I stopped. That's a good question, to be honest. I didn't know myself. I had been moving forward blindly, hoping to find someone, anyone, and learn more about what was happening. But instead, we were met with an empty, desolate city. Not a single soul was in sight. The silence hung heavy, and in its own way, the place felt eerily unsettling. I was hoping to see if there was anyone, but it looks like this entire place has been abandoned. I've yet to even see a single corpse. At the very least, it doesn't look like the weather has killed anyone yet. Talking about the weather, isn't it getting colder? Kira rubbed her hands together once more, a flame flickering to life before her once more. Evelyn drew closer, and this time, Kira didn't say a word. One could see at a glance that the mana films around everyone's bodies were growing thinner. This is odd, Anaz muttered, staring at the mana that coated his hand. I'm starting to feel my mana consumption increasing with each second that we spend here. I don't really have a good feeling about this. Anaz turned in my direction. Should we go back? Maybe it would be best if we wait until the weather clears out before going into the city. Several heads turned in my direction. What? Seeing them all look at me, I was speechless. Did they really expect me to be the one to make the decisions? You're the one who wanted to come here. Of course, we're going to look at you. Kira pointed out the evident, and I could only sigh. To go back, or to go deeper? To be honest, the answer was pretty obvious to me. Let's go deeper into the city. There was no point in returning to the ship. The weather wasn't going to improve. If anything, it would only get worse. Without Clora's return, there was simply no chance of the storm easing, it would keep growing stronger, swallowing everything in its path. I started to give them all an explanation of the situation. From what I've heard, the goddess Clora has died. The instability in the weather is most likely due to her passing. If I'm not wrong, things will only become worse in the upcoming hours. For this reason, I think it's best that we go ahead. In fact, we should probably hurry. Quote. 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 There was a moment of silence following my words. I could feel multiple hostile stares focused in my direction. The way they looked at me left me momentarily speechless. What? Why were they looking at me like this? So you're saying that Goddess Clora has died, and the reason why the weather is like this is because of her passing? Anaz said, rubbing his forehead. I nodded shortly after. Yeah, pretty much. He had summarized the situation pretty well. Quote. Quote. The lot of them grew silent once more. Eventually, it was Kira who broke the silence. Should I do it, or should you guys do it? She clenched her fist tightly, threatening me with it. I looked at her speechlessly. The fact that the others were actually encouraging her only made that feeling stronger. Well, I can understand why they're mad, but Panthea did say that there's a chance that she's alive. To be honest, I don't even know whether she's alive or not, and I also am not completely sure that my reasoning is correct. I could only shrug. What I'm saying is the potential truth. Like I said, from what I heard, there's a chance that I'm wrong. Either way, we should hurry up. If we waste any more time, I don't think we'll be able to leave this place. The others looked around, and after seeing that the situation was only growing worse with each passing moment, they let go of their anger towards me before moving ahead. Since there's likely no one in the city, let's try to head out. In order to reach Veltrus's territory, we have no choice but to leave anyway. The main goal from the start was to reach Veltrus's territory. I wanted to know more about Delilah, but it seemed pointless to look for information in this place. In that case, it was best if we all headed out of the city and made our way towards the goal destination. Let's go. I hurried my steps as I headed deeper into the city, covering my body with an even thicker veil of mana. Craw crack, craw crack, craw crack. The ice cracked beneath our feet with every step, and the farther we ventured into the city, the colder and eerier it grew. As if that weren't enough, a thick fog began to creep over the area, slowly wrapping around us and clouding our vision. Still, this wasn't enough to make me panic. Without a second thought, I used my threads and connected them with a piece of their clothing. There was also mana sense. I wasn't worried about losing sight of any of them. But there was a growing issue. Ha, ha, ha. The mana in the air began to drain faster than before, dropping at an alarming rate. If I hadn't been tier 8, I might have started to panic myself. But even if I could endure it, the same couldn't be said for the others. Anaz, can you hold on? Do you need me to share some mana with you? Anaz was struggling the most out of everyone present. With a pale face, he tried to keep up with everyone as he held onto Anne's hand and continued marching forward. He was the weakest out of all of us present, just barely at the 6th tier. No, it was more accurate to say that he was still in the 5th tier, just on the verge of reaching the next tier. His talent wasn't too bad, but it wasn't anything monstrous either. I think I can hold on. Not a moment after he spoke his words, the fog thickened. Shit, everything within the vicinity started to vanish from our sight. Fuck, I can barely see. This fucking fog. Let's hurry. Out of precaution, I activated mana sense. There was something about this fog that felt deeply unsettling to me as I scanned my surroundings, trying to see if anything was approaching us. Thankfully, it appeared that we were the only people present as I expanded the threads from out of my body to get a better feel of the surroundings. The simple act caused my mana to fall faster, but this was still within manageable levels for me. Using the threads, I reached out, scanning everything ahead in hopes of finding a way out of the fog-covered city. But the place was far larger than I'd anticipated, and no matter how far I extended the threads, the exit remained beyond my reach. Still, I was at least sure that there was only the 7 of us within the surroundings. Let's go this way. I guided the group using the threads. Keeping mana sense active, I made sure to keep everyone next to me so we wouldn't get lost, and time continued to flow that way. None of us tried to speak the entire time, the only sounds were the howling wind and the weight of our own breathing. At some point, however, I had to stop. How is everyone holding up? I needed to check up on how Anaz and the others were doing. In case they needed mana, I planned on helping them. I can't say we're close to the city's exit, but I think we're nearing the center. If that's the case, we should be able to get out of here soon. Hopefully, the fog doesn't spread beyond that point, though I can't be sure. At least I know it's only temporary. Quote. It was silent. I cocked my head, staring at the numerous glowing pieces of light that hid in the fog. I was certain that they were there. The threads were still attached to their body, and I could also see their outline with my mana sense. Why weren't they speaking? Guys. Silence. My words were met with heavy silence. I licked my lips, finally realizing that something was off as I squinted my eyes to stare at the 6 glowing figures in front of me. Eventually, I drew closer, and the moment I did, my expression started to change. Quote. Exclamation mark quote. Instead of seeing the others, my eyes fell on 6 figures carved from ice, their shapes identical to the others, each one staring straight at me with lifeless, frozen eyes. The threads were all connected to them, and for some reason, their bodies each manifested the same glow that the others did when using mana sense. Shit, my heart pressed tightly against my chest as I felt a terrifying premonition. And sure enough, crack, the statues of ice began to move, their hands and bodies robotically turning in my direction. I didn't waste a second, pressing my hand forward and shattering the first statue. Bang, the statue broke without much effort, but the moment one broke, another one built. To make matters worse, I could feel the pressure coming from the ice statue grow as my heart sank further, and the other statues started to draw closer in my direction. Fuck, I secretly cursed under my breath, the mana inside of my body starting to boil. Single quote. I can't ever visit a place without it trying to kill me, huh? Chapter 813, The City of Frozen People 2. Great, just fucking great, I cursed out loud, staring at the ice blocks in front of me. Of course, things aren't going to be easy. There's always some bullshit along the way. Swoosh, the fog thickened, and so did the cold. Staring at the ice blocks that looked like the perfect outlines of everyone, I moved closer to get a better look, but just as I did, one of the lights within my mana sense vision began to move, startling me for a moment. And soon, Julian, what's going on? A lock of purple hair appeared before me. Evelyn appeared a moment later, moving from behind one of the blocks. Her face was a little pale, but as she looked around, her lips trembled. What's going on? Why are they like this? Do you know what's going on? I was a little hesitant as I stared at Evelyn. The entire situation was off. How come she was still fine? What about the others? Why did they convert into ice blocks while she didn't? Could she be an imposter or the one responsible for this? My heart grew cold, but I didn't let it show. I'm not sure myself. This was a little abrupt. I hadn't even realized what was happening before they all froze solid, turned into blocks of ice in an instant. It took only a moment, a single glance away, and they were gone. Whoever was behind it had to be incredibly powerful. Of this, I was sure. It's also possible that this may be due to the fog and environment, but if that was truly the case, then Evelyn wouldn't be here with me. I'd also have felt something. It either has to be someone else, or perhaps even a monster. A really strong one. My body tensed, but I knew this wasn't the time for me to get lost in my own thoughts. To talk, I knocked on the ice blocks. Hey, what are you doing? Evelyn looked a little startled by my actions. At the very least, she was acting just like Evelyn usually did. Perhaps it was really her. I'm just checking something. I broke one of the blocks earlier, but it repaired itself. I want to see if the others have really turned completely into ice. There was a certain warmth coming from the ice blocks that told me that Leon and the others were indeed part of the ice blocks. The fact that Mana Sense could still detect them appeared to reaffirm this thought. But, how the hell do we get them out of this? Should we try melting them? Quote. Evelyn's suggestion made me pause. It wasn't a bad idea. We can try that. Should I do it? I don't think you're very good at controlling elements. I'm not. The only element I could control was the curse element, and even that was mostly due to the previous Julian. Evelyn also specialized in the lightning element, but she had much better control over the fire element than I did as she flicked her hand and flames appeared a moment later. Staring at the flames, I recalled something. Weren't you trying to get Kira to put a flame for you? If you could do it from the start, why not do it? And waste my mana, Evelyn scoffed, placing the fire near Aoife's statue. Quote. No, thank you. I'd rather waste Kira's. Oh, well, I should have seen the answer coming. I would have also done the same if it were Leon. How odd. The ice. It's not melting. Evelyn tried to increase the power of the flame as it grew brighter across the surroundings, but even as she placed it near Aoife's body, the statue refused to melt. She continued for several more minutes, until she had no choice but to stop. I don't think I can keep going like this. I'm wasting too much mana. At this rate, I might not be able to continue any further. That's fine. I hadn't held much hope from the start. What should we do? Evelyn looked at the statues with a troubled look. I was no different. I didn't really know what to do, but after thinking it over, I made up my mind. Let's grab them and leave this place. I can feel the weather growing worse. I also don't know the reason they are like this, but I feel like it's best if we bring them with us, and find some place to rest where we can figure the situation out. Okay. Evelyn didn't have any objections to my arrangement. With a simple nod, she moved towards Kira and Aoife before she reached to grab the two of them. Ook. Because we needed to conserve mana, we had no choice but to carry them with us. The plan was that I'd carry Leon, Anaz, and Anne while she carried Aoife and Kira. Which direction? Just go straight. Swoosh. Walking with several ice statues in hand, the temperature plummeted further as the surrounding weather grew increasingly volatile. The mana coating around my body started to think at an even faster rate, and so did the mana inside of my body. Going forward, neither one of us spoke. We just focused on going deeper into the city. I'd want to go to the ship, but I'm sure the waters are already frozen stiff. Not only that, but I think they have probably also left too. But that's not really what bothers me at the moment. Staring at Evelyn's back and the two statues next to me, my heart grew even heavier. I hadn't told Evelyn yet because I was still unsure of whether it was truly her or not, but looking at the statues next to me using Mana Sense, I could see their mana rapidly starting to deplete, their glow growing thinner and thinner in my eyes. My heart sank further at the sight. What exactly was going to happen if their mana depleted completely? I didn't want to think about it as I hurried my steps. Swoosh, swoosh, but moving through the fog was becoming harder by the minute. Visibility had dropped to nothing, and the winds that had begun to stir were now growing stronger, pushing against us with relentless force. The blades of wind pierced my skin as my clothes fluttered uncomfortably. Not just that, but the statues that I was carrying with me were also seemingly growing heavier and heavier with each passing minute. It got to a point where it felt a little strenuous. Let's keep pushing. I can still keep going. A low, yet deep, whistling sound reverberated through the surroundings as I kept my gaze fixed on Evelyn, trying to make sure nothing happened to her or that she did anything unexpected. Julian. Her voice soon reached my ears, making me look up a little. Stopping for a moment, Evelyn turned her face slightly, exposing her pale face and trembling lips. I think you should see this. Evelyn returned her attention ahead, prompting me to frown. Did she notice something? Crunch, crunch. The snow beneath me crunched as I stepped forward, and the moment I arrived next to Evelyn, I paused, my eyes falling on the spot she was looking at, my heart coming to a sudden stop. A wide plaza stretched out before me, the fog thinner here than it had been before. The tall buildings of ice surrounding the area seemed to hold it back, their massive bodies rising like frozen walls. Cracks ran along their surfaces, and faint wisps of mist curled around their edges, giving the center an eerie, breathless silence. But that wasn't what grabbed my attention. No, what truly made my breath catch was the sight before me, thousands of frozen statues filling the plaza, each turned toward the massive figure at the center. The towering statue depicted a woman clutching a great scepter, her expression serene yet commanding, her simple presence demanding a respect that only a god would command. I knew it in an instant. Clora. That was the statue of Clora. That's. How many people are there? Evelyn's voice continued to shake, not from shock but from the cold slowly seeping into her bones. I was no different. I started to feel the cold as well. This was despite the thin mana film that covered my body. I'm not sure. There were simply too many to count. Probably several thousand. Could be even more. The fog was thinner, but it didn't mean I could see everything. Still, from what I was seeing, I could more or less tell what had happened. This is probably after news of the goddess's death has made its way over here. All the people very likely rushed towards the statue to pray to it. Even as the weather grew worse, they remained still, and this is the result. But, I couldn't detect anything with mana sense. This meant that, my thoughts came to a sudden pause. Julian. As if something had changed in me, Evelyn stared at me in confusion. I didn't answer her and placed everyone I had on me down. Keep an eye on them for me. I need to check something. Wait, Julian. I didn't wait for Evelyn to finish speaking before rushing ahead with everything that I had. The statues came into view quickly, and as I looked ahead, a certain silhouette appeared within my mana sense, its glow visible, though not very bright. There's someone. The thought became clearer the moment I saw it move within my vision. Crunch, crunch. I didn't waste a second, rushing faster in the direction of the silhouette, and as I navigated through the numerous frozen statues, I soon saw it. Through the thinning fog, I caught sight of a silhouette. A figure standing with their back to me, positioned before several of the statues. In their hands, they held a towel, carefully wiping the ice from the frozen figures, tending them in silence. And soon, crunch. Their bodies stopped the moment I drew closer, the crunch of the snow beneath revealing my position. Slowly, the figure froze. An apparent tremor became apparent, and a moment later, the figure slowly turned their head, revealing a pair of azure blue eyes as our figures met. My eyes lit up with joy. A survivor. There really was a survivor. Chapter 814, The City of Frozen People 3. He didn't look very old. In fact, he looked quite young. His eyes were a clear shade of azure blue, and his hair was pure white, blending seamlessly with the pale tone of his face. But he didn't look well. Despite having just cleaned the statues, his body was thin, and his lips were almost entirely blue. Quote. For a moment, the surroundings turned completely silent. Neither one of the two made a sound. But that was until, swoosh, he turned around and made a dash for it, leaving everything behind. Hey, wait, his sudden actions left me stunned for a moment. However, I was quick to snap out of it as I immediately chased after him. I thought about screaming, wait, I don't mean any harm. I'm friendly, but that would only make things harder. Not only that, but he was very likely not speaking the language I spoke. They spoke a different language around here. Thankfully, I wasn't completely unprepared as I tapped into my ring and took out a small artifact that I placed next to my shirt. I started screaming again. Wait, this artifact was something that Anne had given to us beforehand. Knowing that we were going to the land of elements, she got an artifact that could directly translate my words. It was also like this that the others were able to communicate in the mirror dimension. Still, crunch, 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 it didn't seem to work at all, as the little guy started running even faster. I stared at the scene speechlessly before stopping. In the end, I could only swipe my hand in his direction. Quote. Exclamation mark quote. His entire body froze on the spot. I should have done this from the start. I don't know why I even bothered chasing him. Flicking my hand again, the boy turned around as I ushered him in my direction. He tried to resist, but he wasn't very strong. He could only struggle so much until he finally arrived right before me. His eyes shook. Yeah, this isn't good. I pressed my hand down. Fear, an emotive mage couldn't just channel emotions into another person. They were also capable of removing said emotions, and that was what I was doing as I used my emotive magic to calm him down directly. That did the trick as he started to shake a moment after. I'm not going to harm you. You can relax. For just the briefest of moments, his eyes shook, but I curbed any rising fear as I made sure to keep eye contact with him. I'm only here to ask you for information. I promise you that I won't harm you. Look, I'll slowly release the binds over you. Just don't run away. I raised both of my hands to show him that I wasn't trying to hurt him and slowly released my skill. The boy's body twitched for a brief moment. I almost thought he'd run away, and I could still tell that his emotions were going rampant, but after calming his fear down, he didn't run away. He just remained standing, staring at me with his azure eyes. Okay, it looks like he can be talked to. This is good. I opened my mouth and tried to communicate with him once more. Like I said before, I don't mean any harm. I'm just looking for some information. Is it okay if I ask you? In exchange, I'll give you food. Quote. Exclamation mark quote. The mention of food was what did it. His eyes lit up for a moment, but only for a moment, as he immediately grew guarded once more. Ah, here we go again. I had no choice but to take something out of my ring and toss it in his direction. Here, it was a chocolate bar. I had plenty of those. You can have this. I've got plenty more. Quote. Quote. The boy stared at the chocolate bar with a blank expression, his Adam's apple bobbing as he swallowed quietly. I expected him to eat it right away, but instead, he slipped it into his pocket and crouched down without a word. His actions confused me, but soon, his hand reached for the snow beneath. Ilian, what was that? I looked at the boy who suddenly stopped to look back at me. He then pointed at himself. Ah, I suddenly understood. Is that your name? Nod. The boy nodded, his hand moving once again in the snow. I am mute. His next words made me understand his silence and the reason why he was writing with his hand. After a moment of hesitation, he looked back at me before writing. Single quote. Do you have more food? I assured him. Yes, I have more. I'm going to give you more if you can provide me with more information. The boy's azure eyes remained fixed on me before he nodded once more. Follow me. He didn't elaborate further. However, I knew that he was most likely going to bring me somewhere important. But just as he was about to leave, I stopped him. Wait a moment, I'm not the only one here. Ilian stopped, his expression growing a little wary. I didn't explain to him and just looked back. You can follow me or stay here. There's only one other person. Quote. Quote. Ilian remained silent, but ultimately decided to follow me as I led him towards Evelyn. However, on the way to Evelyn, I realized that he was a little restless as he looked at each statue carefully. I wanted to ask him more about it, but stopped. Julian. Her voice reached me a moment later, soft and trembling. Guilt washed over me the instant I saw her. Her whole body was shaking, and her face looked even paler than before. A small flame flickered weakly in front of her, its light unsteady, as if it could die out at any moment. What took you so long? She asked, her voice filled with a little resentment. Why did you suddenly disappear like that? It's getting even colder, and my mana reserves are starting to die out. I don't then, huh? Evelyn suddenly blinked, finally taking notice of the boy who stood close to me. Wah! Evelyn raised her head to look at me. Who is that? I didn't waste a second and introduced him to her. He's Ilian. At least, that's what he says he's called. I found him below, which is why I had to rush. I couldn't afford to lose him since he might be able to get us some important information. Oh, Evelyn's lips pursed for a moment, her voice lowering for a moment. Quote. If that's the case, then you did well. Guess, I would have preferred it if you had told me in advance. There was no time. Well, fine. Evelyn turned her attention towards Ilian and waved at him. Hello. Quote. Quote. He didn't answer and just looked at her. Evelyn's face turned awkward as she looked at me. That was when I explained to her, he's mute. Quote. Oh, Evelyn had a look of understanding. Just when she was about to say something, I felt a small tug on my clothes. When I turned, I saw Ilian looking at me with a sense of urgency, his hand pointing towards the distance as if trying to say, let's go. No, time, let's go. I looked at Evelyn, and the two of us immediately went to grab the others. We didn't question his warning. But, shake, shake, shake. Ilian's grip over my shirt tightened as he hurriedly shook his head. I turned to look at Ilian before explaining, they're my comrades. They are with me, they are also alive, so, shake, shake. Ilian appeared insistent, his head shaking even more fiercely. He appeared completely opposed to the idea of bringing them along with us, and for a moment, I was stumped. That was until, thud, Ilian knelt onto the snow and started writing with his finger. Dangerous. Don't bring. Come back later. His words made Evelyn and me pause. Dangerous. Why would it be dangerous? Ilian didn't elaborate, shaking his head repeatedly. No, no, no. He kept insisting that we couldn't bring them, but it wasn't like I could just abandon them here. I'm sorry, but I can't do that. I couldn't allow for anything to happen to them. Quote. Exclamation mark quote. Ilian looked frustrated, reaching for my shirt again, but I was also firm on my stance. Explain the situation more so that I can understand. It wasn't like I was dismissing his warning. I did believe him, but I couldn't just toss them away because of this. I could still feel their mana, and I knew that they were alive. I can just go to them later, but I don't feel like that's a very good idea. The environment is turning worse and worse. I have a feeling that if I leave them here, by the time I return, they'll turn like the other statues here. No, 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 no. Ilian grew more frustrated, and all his previous fear and anxiety started to return. He tried to bring me away, but I refused to listen. In the end, it was Evelyn who ended up speaking. Why don't you explain the situation to us so that we can understand? These people over here are people that we care about. I understand that you want us to leave, but we can't just blindly trust your words without knowing about the situation. Crack. A loud crack reverberated throughout the area. It was subtle, but the moment it sounded, it seemed to spread across the entire surroundings, attracting our attention. Ilian's face froze, and the fear that I had just suppressed resurfaced once more as he slowly turned his head in the direction of the frozen statues behind. I followed her lead, and that's when I saw it. The statues were moving. Thin cracks split across their necks as, one by one, thousands of frozen figures slowly turned their heads toward us. My breath paused, but as if that wasn't enough. Crack. I heard a cracking sound coming from near me, and as I turned my head, I watched as Leon's, Annis's, and the other statues started to turn their heads to face our direction. The moment I activated Mana Sense, I also saw numerous bright lights flooding my vision. Lights that hadn't been there before. I smiled then. It's not like I didn't want to heed his warning, but he never explained the situation properly. I just couldn't abandon them without knowing the reason. After all, it'd be stupid of me to believe the words of a stranger blindly. I sighed, looking at all the statues staring in my direction before grabbing Ilian by the back of his shirt. Point at me where we need to go. I'll bring us there quickly. Chapter 815, The City of Frozen People 4. There was no time to think. Point at me in the direction of where we should go. I stopped holding my mana back. The ice statues themselves didn't seem particularly threatening, but that wasn't what worried me. My real concern was that I didn't want to harm them. If they truly were still living people trapped in ice, then the best thing I could do was avoid them. Even though I already saw that nothing happened before, it's best if I'm cautious. I also didn't know if there was more to the statues. Grabbing Ilian by the waist, I had him point towards a certain direction before running with all my might. Hey, wait, Evelyn shouted, but was helpless as I grabbed her by the waist and hoisted her up on my shoulder. Kyak, she screamed, but I ignored her plight. There was no time to waste. Let me go. I can run myself. Sure, you can, Julian, I said, I believe you. Then let me go. I ignored her and looked at the boy. Where should we go, Julie? Kyak. The moment Ilian pointed straight, I moved. Evelyn's purple hair fluttered in front of my face, covering my vision, and forcing me to huff it out of my vision as I hurried ahead, avoiding all the ice sculptures along the way. Avoiding them was easy. None posed any real threat, but the deeper I ventured into the city, the heavier the atmosphere became. Along the way, I passed hundreds of those statues, scattered across the streets just like the ones before. It made me question more about the situation, but I didn't have the time to figure it out. The air grew colder, and my mana drained faster with each step, the sharp sting of the cold biting deeper into my skin. Evelyn had long stopped shouting, her body curling over my shoulder as she tried her best to preserve herself as I looked at the young boy in my arms. How much longer? Quote. Ah, of course. For a moment, I forgot he was mute. Looking around, and seeing that I was still surrounded by statues, a thought crossed my mind, and after a moment of hesitation, I took out a sword from my ring and tossed it on the ground, placing my foot over it and levitating over the ground with Evelyn and Ilian. The moment we hovered in the air, the statues stopped bothering us, but at the same time, the mana inside of my body started to drain at an even faster rate. I was hesitant about doing this, but I had no choice as I turned to look at Evelyn. Evelyn, do you still have your bracelet? Evelyn turned her head, exposing her pale face as her mind struggled to comprehend my question, but after catching a glimpse of Ilian, her mind sobered up as she immediately understood what I was trying to do, and she hurriedly reached for the bracelet on her wrist and gave it to me. It might work. I know. The boy was probably mute due to physical reasons. In that case, it was possible that the bracelet would enable me to communicate with him more effectively. It's a pity that I can't get in contact with Leon and the others with it. I knew that they were statues, but I had hoped they had still retained their consciousness. Here, wear this. I grabbed the boy's hand and placed the bracelet on it. He was obviously hesitant, but under my grip, he couldn't do anything at all. I didn't waste a second and tried to communicate with him. Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Quote. The child gave no response, and for a moment, my brows furrowed. Did it not work? I pressed my lips together, glancing down. The sight that greeted me below nearly gave me the shock of a lifetime as the statues continued to move, climbing onto one another, eventually bridging the gap between us. I didn't waste a second and pushed the sword higher in the air. There, smart. It didn't feel like this at first, but upon seeing their actions, it seemed they weren't stupid, at least. I was about to push the sword even higher when a certain voice made its way into my ears. Wah! What? This? My body went rigid, and I slowly turned toward the boy. He was staring at me with a puzzled expression, his large azure eyes blinking in confusion. Seeing him stare at me, I heard the voice echo inside my head once more. Weird, this. Hearing his voice again, I was certain of it now. The bracelet worked. I clenched my fist silently while staring at the young boy. The item that you're wearing allows communication between the two of us. Since we're communicating through our minds, there's no need for you to use your vocal cords. You can speak freely to me. Single quote. Exclamation mark single quote. Seeing the child's eyes widen in surprise, a grin almost tugged at my lips. One I managed to suppress as I lowered my gaze. There's no time. Quickly lead the way. I don't think I can hold for much longer. This was a half-truth. It was true that my mana was running fast, but I had quite a lot of it too. In fact, I could probably last for half a day. However, I still wanted to preserve as much of it as possible. Thankfully, the child also appeared to notice my struggle, as he nodded his head, turned his head towards the right, and pointed. There, not far, near park, 5 minutes, others, there, that was all I needed to hear. I tapped my foot against the sword, and it shot off in the direction he'd indicated. The speed was impressive. What should have taken 5 minutes took less than one as we soared toward the park he'd pointed out. Where? There. The young child pointed at a tall building next to the park, and I didn't hesitate to head there. Even though I was just blindly following a young boy I didn't know, he was my only hope in better understanding the current situation. This was the only way for me to find a way to free Leon and the others. Thud. Landing on the ground, I glanced around. The park was deserted, with none of the statues that had filled the city moments ago in sight. Strange, I muttered, glancing toward Ilian. I was about to ask why this area was different, but before I could speak, he began walking toward the large building at the far end of the park, stopping before a massive door. I didn't ask him anything this time. I wanted to see what he'd do, and a moment later, he stopped right before the door before knocking a couple of times. At the same time he did, I narrowed my eyes, staring at my surroundings. This area feels weird. I'm not sure how to put it. I was about to investigate when a sharp hissing sound drew my attention back to the door as it slowly creaked open. A moment later, a twin-tailed girl stepped out. Her face was pale, her body frail looking, but what struck me most were her closed eyes. A thought surfaced in my mind as I brought a hand to my forehead. Don't tell me, you must be the guests that has brought Ilian back. The girl's voice was frail and soft. With her eyes closed, she stood by the door. Old, like to thank the two of you for helping out my brother. If, not for your help, he would have struggled quite a bit getting back. She stuttered with her words, her voice growing frailer by the second, but she still insisted on speaking, despite Ilian's strong tugs. I looked at the two. So they were related. I know we don't know each other, well, but, would you want to come in? I looked at Evelyn. Her face was even paler than before, and as I saw her nod her head slowly, I also nodded. Yes, I'd like that. Seeing how the two children managed to endure this weather, I figured they must have some way to keep themselves warm, perhaps even a means to fix the current situation. At the very least, I wanted to know what had truly happened. In fact, maybe I could even find out more about her. See, come in. The girl's voice pulled me from my thoughts again. Evelyn and I exchanged a brief glance before stepping through the massive doors, which closed behind us with a heavy bang. What greeted the two of us after entering was a long, dark corridor. The quiet sound of our steps echoed within the corridor as I followed the two children before me, my mana sense allowing me to see within the darkness. I wanted to speak to Ilian, but decided to stay quiet as I continued to follow them along. At the same time, I nudged Evelyn to get ready. One might never know what could happen. We walked in silence for half a minute, moving forward through the dim corridor. Eventually, the two children came to a stop. And that was when we heard the muffled voices coming from the distance. Hey, watch yourself. You stepped on my foot. Stepped over your foot, my ass. You can't even feel your own foot. What nonsense are you speaking? Of course I can feel it. Look, I just bashed your foot, and you didn't even scream. Ha! Fucking, that's too late. Ha! My foot. Quote. Making out the conversation that was happening in the distance, my lips twitched. What sort of conversation was this? Don't mind them. The young girl's voice reached me a moment later as she placed a hand against the wall, feeling along its surface until a faint click sounded. A moment after, the low grind of shifting stone echoed through the air. Light spilled out a moment later, revealing a large room beyond. A gentle warmth flowed from within, washing over me and easing the chill that clung to my body. But what truly caught my attention was something else. Come here, you old Hugar. I'll bash your foot with this hammer. Holding onto a hammer with both hands, a bulky man with a buzz cut glared at an elderly man not far from him, standing behind a wooden table as he pointed towards the man. In the name of all goodness of Chlora, you must have lost your mind. The old man stomped his foot on the table. Look, it's practically gone. It looked pretty good to me. Swoosh. A large object came hurtling towards the old man, who screamed, Hiya! Murder. I'm about to be murdered. He brought both his hands to cover his face. But just as the hammer was about to make its way towards him, it suddenly stopped. Not a moment later, a voice echoed, the two of you, stop it. A figure appeared before the old man a moment later, his hand reaching onto the frozen hammer before tossing it on the ground. There's a time and place for everything. And soon, his gaze fell on us, his smile warm. There are guests that we need to greet. Chapter 816, The Curse That Plagues the City 1. He stood a little taller than I did. His face was pale as snow, and his hair a deep azure, matching the color of his eyes. A faint pressure settled over my chest as I looked at him. He's strong. I couldn't quite make out his strength, but it wasn't far off from mine. Who are these people? It was the man's voice that finally caught the attention of the old man and the burly man. The two both turned in our direction, their bodies tensing with caution. It was the little girl who explained, they are people that Ilian brought over. They apparently helped him get here. He also says that they have food. I think this is good. The more survivors, the better. Food? Did you just say food? The moment food was mentioned, the old man's eyes lit up. The way he looked at me was also a lot more welcoming. If that's the case, what are you waiting for? Please come in. Come in. He smiled, exposing his crooked teeth. I felt a little hesitant, but the warm voice of the man from before echoed once more. Please enter. We can't expose this room to the cold for much longer. Oh, right. I looked behind me and then to Evelyn. She appeared hesitant, but we didn't really have much of a choice.
The two of us walked into the room, and not a moment after we stepped in, a certain warmth bathed our bodies. Quote. Exclamation mark quote. The sensation, it was euphoric to some extent. Although I had been able to withstand it somewhat, the cold still pierced past the small barrier of mana that I'd cast over my body. This feels so much better. Clank. The door closed behind, and the warmth grew. It was also in that moment that I took a good look at my surroundings. We were in a decently sized room, about the size of a tennis court, filled with the basic necessities, from tall metal shelves to some sofas, and a dim light right above. I wondered what this place was, but a pungent smell brought me out of my thoughts. The hell is this smell? Hee hee. The old man appeared before me, drool glistening at the corner of his mouth. Though well into his later years, he still had a full head of hair and a thick beard. His clothes were disheveled, and as I stared at him, I realized he was the source of the stench. He acts and looks like a hobo. I tried my best to keep my face composed, but his next actions nearly made my face crack. So, he hooked his arm over my shoulder, the intense stench making my stomach turn. You know, hee hee, you mentioned something about fetch. Quote. Exclamation mark quote. Tossing whatever I could find from my ring, the old man dashed in the direction of the food as I took the chance to move away. Oh, by the time I looked at the old man again, he was devouring the snack bar that I had tossed away. So good. Seeing the looks the others were giving, I took out some other things and handed them over. There's more food if anybody wants. I actually had a lot of rations. With all my previous experiences, I learned to bring a large stack with me before every trip, or during trips. This was to prevent unwanted situations from occurring. Single quote. Looks like I was right in doing so. Are you sure we can have this? The little girl hesitantly reached for the jerky in my hand. The same was for Ilian, who swallowed quietly. Don't be shy, take it, he's offering it to you. It was the warm voice from the man that made the two finally muster up the courage to take the food. The little girl's eyes twitched as she brought the food to her nose, taking a small bite before eating it with her small hands. Ilian was a little less gentle, biting everything down at once. They must have been quite hungry. Seeing how small the children were, I could tell that they hadn't eaten in a while. This made me curious. What in the world was happening here? Were these all of the survivors left? Thank you so much for your help. I was starting to worry about what we'd do if we couldn't find any food. You see, our supplies are running dangerously low. Approaching me, the man didn't shy away from the snacks in my hand, grabbing one and handing it over to the burly man before taking one for his own. He extended his hand in my direction. I'm Wheeler, nice to meet you. Quote. Nice to meet you. I shook his hand, but paused after feeling just how cold it was. For a moment, it almost felt as though I was grabbing onto a cube of ice. Haha, don't mind that. Wheeler brought his hand away, brushing his azure hair back. Although my hand is cold, that's mainly because I'm very well attuned with the ice element. I'm not particularly affected by the weather outside. Oh, that explains his hair and eyes. There were some people whose elemental affinity could dictate the appearance of their regular features. It wasn't exactly strange, but that wasn't what I cared about. If you don't mind me asking, can you tell me exactly what is going on around here? I was dying to know. From the moment I arrived, Leon and the others suddenly turned into ice. Thousands of frozen statues lined the streets, and after a while, they began attacking us. Did I forget to mention that the cold is slowly draining our mana? This entire situation, it was messed up. I really wanted to understand what was going on. About that, the mood in the room turned strange, and everyone paused their actions. However, it was Wheeler who curbed the tension that suddenly rose. Seeing as to how you're not familiar with the situation, and how you still have fresh rations, I guess you must not be aware of what happened recently in our domain. Do you mean Chloris? I didn't finish. I knew that this could potentially be a sensitive topic. No one could ever know if they were fanatics or not. Ah, so you do know. In that case, it makes things a little easier for me to explain. Wheeler smiled. Quote. It all happened out of nowhere. Wheeler's smile started to fade, his tone lowering at the same time. The world went on as it always had. Everyone carried on with their lives, and though life in the mirror dimension was never easy, we managed. Under Chlora's protection, the harsh weather became bearable, and cities began to flourish. We thought it would last forever, until it appeared. The tension within the room heightened. My skin prickled as a certain chill permeated the room, and my breathing paused. The God Hunter. A hidden hatred lay within those words as Wheeler's eyes narrowed. Black, total darkness. That's how I'd describe the God Hunter. I don't think that something like that can ever be considered human. One by one, it started to attack the princess. None of them could put up a fight against it. The God Hunter was simply too strong. Its goal was clear. It wanted to hunt the goddess. The silence that stretched across the room a moment later felt tense as nobody spoke, Wheeler's eyes narrowing as he recalled everything that had happened. Quote. In the end, the God Hunter succeeded. It ended up killing Clara. And he stopped there, but he didn't need to continue. I could more or less understand what he was trying to say. It's not much different from what I expected. This was more or less in line with everything that I had concluded in my mind. In the end, this entire situation is indeed because of Clara's death. Her disappearance has made the entire place unstable, but that doesn't really explain the statues. I was just about to ask, but as though he could read my mind, Wheeler answered that question. The statues originate from the lingering power of the God Hunter. Its power, it doesn't belong to this world. I've never seen anything like it before. It has cursed this domain, and the statues are merely the remnants of its wrath. It's the God Hunter's way of suppressing all of us. Wheeler's expression scrunched up, a clear look of hatred marring his features. But as I looked at him, I couldn't help but be confused. This is all because of Delilah. I wanted to strongly deny this claim, but when I thought of certain moments in the past, I felt my heart growing heavier. If Delilah had truly let herself fall into that strange darkness that lingered within her body, it was certainly possible that she had done this. Very likely, she had done this to make the gods pay for their sins. Still, a part of me hoped that wasn't the case. Because if it was true, then her mind has fallen into the control of the outer gods. The sense of heaviness in my heart grew as I looked at Wheeler. He was no longer frowning and instead appeared a lot calmer. We've been trapped here ever since. We've searched for survivors, hoping to unite and overcome this crisis, but there aren't many of us left. These are some of the people I've managed to find. Wheeler pointed at the people around. An old hobo, a blind girl, a mute boy. The only one that appeared normal was the burly man, but I somehow struggled to believe there wasn't anything strange about him. Still, there was something that I was curious about. I thought back to all the people who had been frozen outside, including Leon and the others. How come only a select few aren't frozen? Is there some sort of reason for that? I glanced at Evelyn beside me. She hadn't been frozen either. I couldn't help but wonder why the two of us, and the people in this room, had been spared from turning into ice. Who said we're exempt from that? But the answer I received wasn't the one that I expected. Wheeler alternated his gaze between the two of us, his smile returning. Quote. None of us is an exception. We're all turning into ice blocks. There's no escaping the curse that God Hunter has set. Chapter 817. The curse that plagues the city too. What do you think? I sat on the floor near the end of the room, with Evelyn quietly settling beside me. Her gaze drifted toward the others, who were huddled together, eating the food I'd given them. None of them spoke, their attention fixed entirely on the meal. However, upon closer examination, it was clear that something was wrong. Their movements were somewhat stiff, and the face of each person was pale. Taking out a snack bar for myself, I took a bite before responding, I'm not sure myself. I don't see why they'd have a reason to lie to us. I'm not talking about that. Evelyn shook her head. Quote. I'm talking about the so-called curse. Are we also affected by it? Are we? I closed my eyes and felt the inner parts of my body. Regardless of how hard I tried, I couldn't feel anything at all. In the end, I could only shake my head. I don't think so. But why? I'd like to know that myself. Leon, Kira, Anaz, Aoife, and Anne had all been afflicted by it. The goal at the moment was to figure out a way to freedom from it, but thinking back to the previous conversation, it didn't seem like they knew it. This is really problematic. I couldn't say everything had been flowing smoothly ever since entering the mirror dimension once more, from the incident with Panthea to this. It was one trouble after another. Single quote. It also seems like Delilah's situation is a lot more dire than I expected. From the description that I had just heard, she wasn't like the Delilah that I knew. She was more like the version that I'd caught in the past. I need to hurry up and find her before it's too late. I could tell her bloodline was beginning to consume her. It had always tried to, slowly gnawing at her from within, but it was after she absorbed Zeahurl's blood that the process accelerated. She was starting to lose control, and I could feel it. A quiet sense of urgency settled in my chest as I tried my best to remain calm. What should we do? Evelyn's voice shook me out of my thoughts. Looking at her, I didn't answer immediately. I didn't know myself. The goal is to figure out a way to stop this curse. It's only that way that we can get Leon and the others back to normal. But how do we do that? I don't know. Cough. Quote. Exclamation mark quote. Quote. Exclamation mark quote. A sudden cough caught our attention, and everyone's head turned in the direction of the sound. Old Sal, old man. Everyone rushed to the old man as he held onto his chest, his already pale face turning pale as he started coughing several more times. Cough, cough. The coughs grew louder with each progressive one, and the old man dropped the snacks in his hands as he knelt on the ground, his hand curling at his shirt. Cough. Stop. Move back. It was a calm voice that brought calm back into the room. Stepping forward, Wheeler approached the old man, brushing his long blue hair behind his ear as he lowered his body to take a look at the old man. Wheeler, how is the situation? Can he? Okay, calm down. With a gentle smile, Wheeler placed his hand over the old man's chest. A faint white glow spread from his palm, washing over the man's frail body. The coughing ceased almost instantly, replaced by steady, shallow breaths. When I looked back at Wheeler, that same calm smile lingered on his face for a moment before he quietly let it fade. You should be fine. I managed to suppress the frost building up within you, but it's getting worse. You should take some time to rest. He spoke without any effort, almost as if what he'd done was nothing trivial. However, I was fully aware of the complexity behind his actions. His control over the frost was unlike anything I'd ever witnessed, precise and almost graceful. Despite myself, I felt a faint twinge of admiration. Single quote. His control is even better than my control over my emotive magic. Certainly, it's better than my curse magic. Of this, I'm sure. I suddenly became curious about Wheeler's identity. Someone this strong and with such fine control over the ice element. There was no way he was a normal person. I started wondering about his past. Wheeler, can you check me too? Same for me. Do it for Ilian too. The two children and the burly man each extended their hands toward Wheeler. Without a moment's hesitation, Wheeler took their hands one by one, repeating the same gesture, his palm glowing softly as the faint white light passed between them. The process was quick, barely taking a minute before. He turned towards us. Do you two want to give it a try? That's all right. I politely refused the offer. To be honest, I did not feel comfortable letting someone I barely knew touch me and send their mana into my body. Wheeler seemed like a kind person, but I had met plenty of people before who looked just like him and turned out to be anything but. There was nothing wrong with exercising a little bit of caution. I understand. Valère appeared to read my thoughts as he no longer asked. Evelyn also didn't appear to be interested. It's getting late. Everyone should take some time to rest. It's going to be a long day tomorrow. Wheeler moved away, walking toward the corner of the room where a small metal table stood. He sat down on the metal chair and closed his eyes, likely trying to recover some of the mana he had spent. I glanced at Evelyn, and together we returned to the spot where we had been sitting before. I turned to face Evelyn, but the moment I did, I realized that she'd already closed her eyes, her breathing growing softer. She's asleep, but it made sense. Considering the situation, it wouldn't have been strange for her to be tired. I was also tired, and after a brief moment of hesitation, I too allowed myself to relax and sleep. Or at least, I pretended to. I had no idea how much time had passed, but it must have been several hours. The moment I heard a faint creaking sound, my eyes snapped open. Almost immediately, my head lifted, despite the darkness that stretched over the room. I could still see the door slowly coming to a close as someone stepped out. Looking around, I slowly rose to my feet and followed after them, slipping through the wall as my domain allowed me to pass seamlessly through the solid surface. I didn't want to make any sound to alert the person and the people in the room. Step, step, the quiet echo of footsteps carried through the air, steadily and in an orderly manner. They weren't mine, but eventually, such steps stopped as light began to spill. Not long after, the large doors of the building opened to reveal a thin fog. A figure stood by the doorway, his azure hair stirring faintly in the still air as he gazed into the fog, watching the vague outlines shifting beyond its veil. I stood completely still, suppressing my presence as much as possible, not daring to make a sound. And then, cough, cough, I heard it, the sound of his coughs. They were violent, far worse than the old man's had been earlier. As the fit overtook him, he braced a hand against the doorframe, struggling to steady himself between each harsh cough. Cough. That was when I knew. He's not fine. He's been faking it from the start. Ah. The fit didn't last long, with Wheeler eventually letting a relieved, almost embarrassed noise before his head slowly turned in my direction. I didn't even bother hiding myself any longer, as I stepped out of the darkness and stared at him. His smile turned awkward. You saw that, didn't you? Quote. I didn't reply. I didn't feel the need to reply. The answer was obvious. That's a little embarrassing. I never wanted to show myself in this state. Quote. I can understand. As the strongest person, he had to show composure. These were the traits of a leader, and the more I stared at him, the more I was certain of the fact that he was not a simple nobody. Ah, Hugh. Rubbing his hands together, Wheeler turned to face the fog once more. It hadn't thickened a little bit, but it was still far better than the previous day. Was this a morning thing? Since you're here, why don't you come with me? I've got something to tend to while the fog is thin. He didn't wait for me to answer, directly stepping out into the cold. I stood still for just the briefest of moments before following him from behind. It hasn't been very long since the goddess died. The curse has settled deep into the city, and not many of us were able to run away. The weaker ones were affected the fastest, their bodies turning into statues first. Slowly, the curse started to eat away at even the stronger ones who chose to remain behind to help the weaker ones. His body drifted slowly alongside the snow, his hair fluttering in the silence as we walked past the part and towards the central area. I was one of those people. I stayed behind in order to help the weaker citizens escape the curse, but you can't escape it. You can only delay it. I've tried to research and understand it, but it's been to no avail. This curse. He wore long, white garments that were light and flowing, and amidst the falling snow, he carried an air of elegance, his every step leaving no trace within the snow. Quote. There's no cure for it. All of a sudden, numerous statues appeared in the distance, their entire bodies covered in a thin layer of snow as Wheeler headed towards the nearest one. This is what I feel is the greatest pity. Wheeler stopped and gazed at the statue before him. Reaching into his pocket, he pulled out a small towel and gently began wiping the snow from the statue's surface. This city is all I have ever known. It is the place that gave me life and accepted me for who I am. To see it fall into what it has become. I cannot bear it. That is why I will do everything I can before I let go. Maybe, someday, the ice will melt, and life will return. But until that day comes, I will stay here, watching over them all. A faint smile tugged Wheeler's lips. I will be the warmth within the cold that has consumed this place. The last trembling ember of a dying fire, holding on, waiting for the moment it can burn bright again. He polished in silence, moving on to the next statue as he finished. I'll be here until my body breaks down, he whispered, his voice barely carried by the wind. Even if no one remembers my name, even if the world forgets this city, even if my body breaks down, I'll remain, until I watch it breathe again. His last words whispered in the air, his focus shifting to another statue. Standing within the wind, only one thought crossed my mind. He's crazy. The entire world had turned to ice. The people, the buildings, the city itself, only a few had survived. Yet even as the people froze, the structures glazed over, and the city collapsed under the weight of frost, one final ember endured, flickering faintly amid the endless cold, waiting for the impossible moment it could ignite once more. Even if the world shattered before his eyes, he would not fall. For he was mad enough to believe it could still be saved. Such was the man who stood before me. The last ember of Isilra, the city of ice. Chapter 818, The Ice That Can Melt One. What an absurd situation. The cloth continued to move, polishing and removing the thin layer of snow that had formed over the statues. Single quote. So this is what Ilian was doing when I found him. This was their effort in trying to preserve the city that the ice had taken over. There are usually times when the statues start to move. They aren't very threatening, but as I grow weaker by the day, they start to become more and more of a threat. Wheeler continued to polish the statues near him. Despite his strength and his ability to wipe the snow with just a flick of his wrist, he did so manually. As you've probably noticed, the cold drains our mana. Every bit of it is precious, and as it's slowly stripped away, we become more vulnerable to the dangers around us. Just like the statues, he removed the cloth, wiping it down to remove any of the crystals that had formed. Taking a moment to pause, he looked at me. If you plan to escape, now is the time. The statues won't move or attack, and the fog is thinnest in the morning. By noon, it thickens again. Once you reach the outskirts of the city, you'll be safe. The curse doesn't spread beyond these walls. Thank you for the offer, but I don't have much of a choice either. I swiped my hand over one of the statues, doing my part in helping Wheeler. There wasn't anything else to do anyway. My friends have also been frozen into statues. I'm trying to find a way to help them out of the situation. Ah, I see. Wheeler went quiet. He said nothing else, but his silence spoke for him. He didn't believe there was any cure or any way to turn the others back. But was that truly the case? If he didn't, there's no way he'd remain here so stubbornly. Just like me, he could have easily escaped this place. He didn't. Why? Because somewhere, deep down, he held on to the belief that the curse had a cure. Asterisk. It looks like the statues are about to move soon. We should head back. I had lost track of time. Before I knew it, the fog started to thicken, and I felt a faint tremor coming from the statues. With a relaxed expression, Wheeler put the towel back into his pocket before heading back towards the shelter. On the way back, we didn't encounter any problems. Neither one of us said a word as we eventually arrived before the familiar buildings and entered. Step, step. The quiet echo of the steps resounded across the dark corridor, and soon, we arrived at the door of the shelter. But, hey, Ol Sal, where's Wheeler? What's going on? Muffled cries echoed from the other side of the door, and immediately after Wheeler opened it, I was greeted by the sight of the old man from before, his eyes closed as he lay on the floor with a pale face. He's not opening his eyes. Sal. Everyone tried to shake him, but he refused to move. The two children began to shed tears, while the burly man continued to shake them. Evelyn stared at all of this with concern, and when she finally noticed me, her expression changed. She almost looked worried, and I could see why. I had been away for quite a while without letting her know. Calm down, let me take a look. Despite the situation, Wheeler remained calm. He walked towards the old man and placed his hand over his chest. Not a moment later, he closed his eyes and tried to feel the situation. The surroundings turned silent, a quiet tension building within the room. But soon, his eyes opened as he smiled. He hasn't turned. I should be able to bring him back. His hand began to glow, and the pallor on the old man's face began to fade. It didn't take long for color to return to the old man's face as his chest finally began to move. The eyes of the children and the burly man lit up. Oh Sal. They looked incredibly happy at the sight, and soon enough, the old man's eyelids began to move as he soon opened his eyes. He looked around, feeling confused by the sight that greeted him. But soon, Sal. The children jumped on him, the burly man just barely holding back as he brought his fist to his face and coughed in embarrassment. What the hell is this? For obvious reasons, the old man was startled by the sudden actions of the children as he tried to push them away, but neither moved. In the end, the old man could only throw his hands in the air as he turned his attention towards Wheeler. The old man appeared to have an understanding of what had happened, and after a brief moment of silence, he mouthed, "Thanks, I guess." He then began to throw curses at the children. Stop. Get out. Get away from me. In this cold, tiny place, it suddenly became lively once more. I stared at the scene before me in silence, feeling a certain tug over my shoulder. When I turned, I saw Evelyn staring at me with a frown as she whispered, "Where did you go?" For some air. Really? Sort of. I paused for a moment, then leaned in to whisper everything I'd discovered during my time outside. Her expression shifted almost instantly, and she turned her gaze toward Wheeler. The way she looked at him changed a little. "And you're sure about this?" "I'm pretty sure. That is." Evelyn looked to be at a loss for words, but as if suddenly recalling something important, she nudged me once more. "Right, there's something else that I wanted to talk to you about." "What is it?" "Actually," Evelyn pursed her lips, grabbing me by the arm and pulling me further back. After making sure that no one was paying attention, she whispered, "I'm not entirely sure, but I think I might be able to cure everyone." Exclamation mark quote. I nearly let out a sound upon hearing her words. Thankfully, Evelyn placed her hand over my mouth before I could do so. "Stop. Keep your voice down. Like I told you, I'm not completely sure. I haven't tested it yet, and I didn't want to say anything before. I was afraid of giving them false hope. But when I checked on the old man earlier, I felt it might be possible for me to help. I was waiting for you to ask."
Evelyn looked at the old man with some hesitation. I could be talking shit, but, hey, I suddenly called out to Wheeler and the others, attracting their attention towards me. Evelyn's eyes widened, her hand slapping onto my shoulder a couple of times, but I didn't care for it as I looked at Wheeler. He was already looking at me, his expression unreadable. However, I was clear about it. He'd clearly heard everything, he just didn't say anything. What is it? The old man soon spoke, his voice slightly hoarse. Rather than answering, I stepped toward him. Evelyn followed close behind, and when I stopped in front of him, I extended my hand. Give me your hand for a moment. Huh. For obvious reasons, the old man looked startled. The same was true for the others, but it was under Wheeler's soft voice that everyone managed to calm down. Don't worry, you can give him your hand. Old Sal hesitated, but eventually nodded, bringing his hand forward. I grabbed it first, channeling my mana into his body. I wanted to see if I could do anything, but I was shocked the moment I did so. This guy, how the hell is he still alive? Nearly half of his organs were frozen solid, his blood among them. The fact that he could still speak and move was nothing short of a miracle. It also made me wonder more and more about this curse. What exactly was it? How come I didn't feel anything related to Delilah from it? So, it was the old man's words that shook me out of my thoughts. I lifted my head to meet his gaze but said nothing. Instead, I turned to Evelyn. She glared at me for a moment, but eventually, she sighed, reached for the hand, and closed her eyes. The room was enveloped in silence. That was until, crack, muffled cracking sounds echoed across the entire space, startling everyone present. Wait, what are you doing? Hey, she's not going to kill me, right? Don't worry, I'm here. Wheeler's words carried a strong sense of authority. The moment he spoke, everyone fell silent. Though hesitation lingered in their eyes, his assurance was enough, and soon, the crackling and muffled noises grew louder as Evelyn's brows drew tightly together. The old man's slow breathing began to change, his body shaking after a moment. This drew a worried expression from everyone, but under Wheeler's calm demeanor. Nobody made a sound. Thump, thump, thump. Sweat beaded along the side of Evelyn's face as she focused, the old man's body beginning to tremble, his features twisting in pain from whatever she was doing. The others tensed, worry flashing across their faces, but Wheeler lifted a hand, silently keeping them back. And soon, Evelyn stopped, bringing her hand away from the old man's hand as her chest heaved up and down unevenly. The surroundings turned silent, a quiet tension settling as Evelyn caught her breath. Eventually, however, she raised her head and looked at the others. After a moment of hesitation, she spoke. It's possible. Her lips pressed into a thin line, her expression shifting into something tense and conflicted. I think I can find a way to fix everyone. I didn't celebrate just yet. Staring at her expression, I knew that there was more to it. And sure enough, her next words confirmed such thoughts. But, I'm not skilled enough yet, she said quietly. I'll need more time. My control, it's still lacking. If I can improve it, I might be able to remove all the ice completely. I can't make any guarantees, but I can try. Chapter 819, The Ice That Can Melt Too. The room turned completely still following Evelyn's words. All eyes turned to her as she stared down at her trembling hand, her brows drawn tightly together. A trembling voice soon broke the silence. Ryu. Evelyn looked towards the old man before nodding faintly. I think it's possible, she said softly, but please don't get your hopes up. I believe there's a chance I can remove the frost inside your body, but like I said, I'm not skilled enough yet. I'll need to refine my control first. For now, the best I can do is ease some of the symptoms, like Wheeler has been doing. That's good enough, the burly man shouted, his expression transforming into one of joy. So long as you can. So long as you can even do that, I'm fine. We can't have all the burden fall on Wheeler. Yes, everyone looked incredibly happy within the room. Seeing how everyone was, Evelyn got a little embarrassed as she lowered her head. That sensation only grew when the two children rushed up to her and hugged her. Yay, please, Evelyn's face soon turned troubled. Like I said, don't get your hopes up. I'm just saying that I will try my best, but there's no guarantee. I'm still not good enough to do that. My control is not very good. I don't know how long it will take for me to improve my control, so there's no need to worry about that. A voice filled the space. And not a moment later. Clank. The door to the room fully opened, revealing a woman with short brown hair.
She wore thick clothes and had a distinctive mole by the corner of her mouth. The moment she appeared, the faces of the children lit up. Sister! Quote. Exclamation mark quote. The two rushed in the direction of the voice. One was mute, and the other was blind. Despite this, the two used each other to help one another. One guided while the other spoke. Still, who was she? Staring at the woman, I grew a little cautious. She didn't seem particularly strong, but she at least appeared to have some air of authority. Looking around, she settled her gaze over to me and Evelyn. I guess the two of you must be confused about me. Let's just say that I've been here the longest besides Wheeler. I've also heard about you from him. I've been busy looking for provisions the past few days, so I wasn't able to make it back. Quote. Oh, I turned to look at Wheeler. He was looking at the woman with a smile. All right, the woman clapped, focusing her attention on Evelyn as she walked closer. I'll be honest, I've been here for a while, looking in. I couldn't help but overhear your conversation, and I'm curious, do you really think there's a chance you could heal everyone? Evelyn opened her mouth, wanting to say something like, no, I don't know yet, but somehow, she lowered her head and nodded. I can. What? I can. Evelyn whispered again, prompting the woman to frown as she placed her finger under Evelyn's chin and raised it. Say that again. I didn't get it. Evelyn clenched her teeth, but eventually repeated, I can do it. The woman smiled. That's a good answer. She then turned her attention towards Wheeler. You heard her, didn't you? I think you should help her with her control. There's no one I know with better precision than you. You're the only one truly qualified to teach her. I don't get a say in this. Wheeler had an exasperated expression. In the end, however, he nodded as he looked at Evelyn. I guess you're right. I can help her in this regard. I may not be the strongest, but when it comes to control, I don't think there are many people who are better than me. His voice was laced with confidence. I stared at him, recalling the things I'd seen him do, and realized he wasn't just boasting. He had the skill to back it up. For a moment, I wanted to ask if he could teach me too, but given the situation, it was better that they focused all their attention on Evelyn. Then it's decided. The woman clapped her hands again. Let's not waste any more time. The sooner we get this done, the sooner we can turn this damn place back to what it once was. Come with me. Wheeler didn't waste any time. He nudged Evelyn with his chin and headed for the door. Evelyn hesitated, looking at me for a moment. I could only encourage her to go. This was a good opportunity for her. Although I was also interested, I knew that what he'd teach her wouldn't be too useful for me. Perhaps it would help me improve my curse magic, but there were other things that I wanted to focus on. Plus, it's best if I stay here to check on the situation. Things might be calm right now, but one might never know. I can't trust them too much. Nodding slightly, Evelyn eventually followed Wheeler out. Clank. The doors closed a moment later, and silence swept the surroundings. That was until, hey, Chloe, the strange woman who had just entered, sat down beside me. Unbuttoning her coat, she set it aside, then reached into her pocket and pulled out a small deck of cards. Swoosh. Skillfully handling them, she smiled. Who wants to play? Asterisk. Time passed in this manner. Every morning, I'd go out to get some fresh air alongside Wheeler while checking out the statues. I'd also go back to check on Leon and the others, trying to make sure that nothing happened to them. They seemed fine at first glance, but when I looked closer with mana sense, I noticed the glow around their bodies was much thinner than before. I could tell that it wouldn't take long before their entire mana ran out. This brought a sudden sense of urgency to the situation. However, despite the urgency, I didn't say anything. Drip, drip, sweat dripped on the floor as Evelyn stood in silence, her pale face focused entirely on the old man in front of her. She had been at it for quite some time, and after about 30 minutes, she finally pulled her hands away from the old man, sweat streaming down the side of her face. Done. Her entire body trembled, not from exhaustion, but from the electricity that ran down her body as light crackled along her body, and faint bolts of lightning flickered within her eyes. The old man opposite her opened his eyes, and his eyes lit up. Hey, he thumped his chest once. I'm actually feeling good. Holy crap, this might actually work. Really? Quote. Is this true? Wait, let me check. The people in the room rushed to the old man, grabbing his arm to assess his condition. A moment later, their eyes lit up. It's true. The frost has subsided a little bit. This might actually work. Immediately, the mood turned festive. All eyes fell on Evelyn as she scratched the back of her head. Quote. Ha, well, I tried. I guess it did work. I'm glad that all of you feel better. The praises seemed to make her shy. However, at the same time, I could also see that she was pleased with the praise. It was almost as if she were saying, I'm actually being useful. People are appreciating my efforts. She looked silly, but it was such silliness that made Evelyn who she was. Ha ha ha, we did it. Hup, two large hands grabbed onto my body, lifting me. I nearly cursed as Reginald, the burly boy from before, lifted me off the ground and spun me around. I wanted to free myself, but decided against it as I didn't want to spoil the mood. Furthermore, in the past several days, I had managed to get a little bit closer to everyone. There was Ilian, the mute boy. He was a little reserved, but with the coming days, he became less so as he spoke to me more and more. Sometimes, he'd sit next to me and ask about the world outside the city. Apparently, he had never wandered away from the city. The little girl, Penelope, was actually his sister. She was extremely bubbly and loved to talk a lot. The moment I grew accustomed to her, she started talking to me non-stop. Reginald was the same, although he was more simple-minded. Othardzil was an old man who acted like a child. Lastly, there was Chloe. She was, Keck, let me join in on the fun. Hup, quote. Coming behind Reginald, Chloe grabbed him and lifted him up. Wait, no, she began spinning the two of us around. Ah, Reginald began screaming while he hugged me even tighter. My clothes and hair fluttered as my lips twitched, watching as the two of us started to spin faster and faster in the air. Faster, you said, swoosh, swoosh, she really did pick up her pace. Ha, I couldn't even see at this point. The world just spun. I sighed, and then, bang, someway, and somehow, she lost grip of the two of us as we crashed on the nearest wall, my back planting against it hard as I slid down a moment later. Quote. Help, I'm going to die. Quote. Oh, oops Tilda. Chloe knocked on her head, sticking her tongue out. Looks like I lost my grip there. Help, my back. I think it's broken. Quote. Don't exaggerate so much. Chloe walked up to the Reginald and grabbed him by the back of his shirt before bringing him back up. She closed her eyes and examined his body before the smile on her face froze. Oh, shit, the smile faded not long after as she looked at Wheeler. His back is really broken. Oh, Reginald screamed more, his legs flaying. In the end, Wheeler handled the situation. Thankfully, he was able to help Reginald recover from his injury. Of course, a lot of screams followed the treatment. It was both a sad and comical sight. The days passed like this. Despite the cold that gripped the world outside, a faint warmth lingered within the small room at the heart of the city. But it didn't take long for things to change. You need to stop. I stared at Evelyn as we both stood outside, a strong wind brushing against the two of us. Staring at her, I pursed my lips. Quote. If you continue healing them, it won't be long until you turn into a statue. Chapter 820. The ice melts, but it freezes the fire. 1. It wasn't obvious at first. There, I think I'm done for today. You should be feeling better. I've removed some of the frost inside your body. If you need any further assistance or experience any discomfort, please let me know. I'll make sure to check and help. Quote. Thanks. Old Sal caressed his beard, grinning at Evelyn. You've been of great help, young lass. Evelyn gave an uncomfortable smile. Young lass. That was what the old man called Evelyn. She still didn't seem used to it, forcing a small, awkward laugh in response. Haha, what did I tell you about calling her that? Look at her, she looks uncomfortable. Chloe came into the room, chuckling to herself as she placed her hand over Evelyn's head and started rubbing it. Hey, what? Despite Evelyn's protests, Chloe continued to rub Evelyn's head. The two had gotten a lot closer lately. What did I say about my hair? So, it's not like there's anyone that you're interested in showing off your hair to. That doesn't matter. Don't talk to me like that. Hiak. The scene was met with laughter and chuckles. The atmosphere had improved considerably compared to its past state. The gloominess that had once taken hold of the room had started to fade, and hope started to surface in the hearts of everyone present. But was it really all sunshine and rainbows? I narrowed my eyes at Evelyn. She was smiling, and she seemed fine, but something felt off. The more I looked at her, the more it felt like her reactions were forced, like she was pretending. But was this just me? I couldn't say that I knew Evelyn like the back of my hand. That'd be a lie. I knew her, but not to a high degree. However, it wasn't like I didn't know her at all. I've been noticing, but besides when she's with the girls, Evelyn never really shows her true self. The way that she is acting right now, and the way that she usually acts, is quite different. Am I thinking too much? Snapping out of my thoughts was a groggy voice. When I turned my head, Penelope was squinting, rubbing her eyes with her small hands before tugging gently at my clothes. Can you tell me a story? She then reached to her left, shaking the boy next to her. Eventually, Ilyan stirred awake, blinking a few times before the girl took his hand and traced something into his palm. His eyes lit up. Me too, his voice echoed inside my mind. Staring at the two children, I could only sigh. Well, fine, this was what I'd become as of late. A babysitter. It's not like I have much else to do. It was this or training. From time to time, I'd leave to check up on Leon and the others, but I couldn't go very far without feeling like I wouldn't be able to make it back. In the end, the only thing I could do was stay here while waiting for Evelyn to figure out a way to cure the people from her curse. In essence, she was this city's only hope. I hope she gets to it quickly. We've already wasted too much time here. I also don't know how long Leon and the others can endure. The most I can do is inject my mana into their bodies to preserve them, but that's not enough. Quickly. Don't rush me. I rubbed my forehead. Quick. All right. I was just about to start when a sudden voice attracted my attention. I'm going to head to the bathroom. I'll come check on the others soon. Please wait for a bit. Turning my attention back to Evelyn, I watched as she brushed herself off and stood. Wiping the sweat from her face, she headed toward the door. As I watched her go, a thought crossed my mind. It's worth checking. Orbs of all different colors appeared in my vision. But one in particular stood out to me. The one within Evelyn's body. Ah, it wasn't just small. It almost covered her entire body. The purple orb. Fear. So I really wasn't wrong, was I? Clank. The door closed shortly after. Step. The quiet echo of the steps reverberated. Within the dark corridor, strands of purple hair swayed with each step as Evelyn approached the main door. She pushed it open, and the frozen world beyond spilled into view. Her body shuddered at the sudden cold, a small film of mana spreading across her entire body to block some of the cold. But how could that be enough? Evelyn started to shiver the moment she stepped out, her mana running dry, but despite this, she still remained calm. Crunch. The snow crunched with each step. Holding on to herself, she headed deeper into the snow. For obvious reasons, the toilets within the place didn't work. Naturally, one would have to attend to their business outside. But was that really the case for Evelyn? Crunch. She walked quite quickly. The place wasn't far, and it wasn't long before she stopped. 5 statues appeared before her. Evelyn stood in silence, staring at the frozen figures that represented the statues. The silence stretched for the next several minutes, Evelyn's body trembling not long after, but not from the cold, but from the overwhelming emotions that she suddenly started to fear. And most importantly, swoosh, Evelyn pulled her sleeve down, revealing her arm. Or to be more precise, what appeared to have been her arm had now turned into ice. Evelyn's chest trembled. Damn it. Clenching her teeth, she cursed. Why is it like this? Had one been standing close to it, they'd be able to hear the utter frustration and helplessness in Evelyn's tone. Indeed, she was helpless. Despite training relentlessly every day, never allowing herself a moment's rest, she pushed her control to its limits. The progress was clear, but still far from enough. Damn it. Evelyn cursed again, her teeth biting down on her lower lip. Looking at Kira and Aoife, Evelyn felt something burn within her chest. It was jealousy. Yes, she was jealous. It had always been that way. Both Kira and Aoife had made names for themselves over the past couple of years. Aoife in particular, her name was something that everyone knew. She was gallant and led armies to fight back against her brother's army. Kira wasn't much different. In fact, one could argue that she was the strongest of the three of them. But what about her? It was true that she had progressed a lot over the past several years, but her progress was slower than the other two. Her fame was also nowhere near the same as that of the two of them. There was also the fact that the two of them usually handled matters much better than she did. And yet, Evelyn bit her lips, trying to push all those disgusting feelings away. She'd always been like this.
A bundle of different emotions that she would constantly try to press down in order to make herself fit in. Depending on the day, she'd wear a different mask. A happy one, a serious one, a sad one, but the most important thing about her mask was that she needed to match it with the situation. She couldn't let it slip. She didn't want people to see her true thoughts and emotions. But at this very moment, now that she was alone, she made that mask slip. Quote. I was useful. Her voice trembled as it echoed in the air. Staring at the statues before her, she licked her lips. I think I'm the only one who is capable of resolving this entire situation. This is the very first time for me. Evelyn's heart pressed heavily as she sat down on the snow, her hands resting over her knees as the breeze brushed her purple hair before her face. Evelyn pushed the hair back. I'm usually always the one who gets in trouble. I've tried to keep pace with the two of you, but even that is difficult. It feels as if the two of you are growing further and further from me. I see the two of you constantly resolving situations yourself while I watch you do it. Evelyn laughed weakly. That's why it felt weird to see people thanking me for something. This is the first time that it's happened to me, and I can't disappoint them. Pausing, Evelyn turned to look at her arm. Even if it hurts me. Evelyn laid out all of her true feelings. There was no one to hear, but it felt liberating for her. As if a massive weight had been moved away from her shoulders, but at the same time, her smile faded. Staring at her arm once more, she clenched her teeth. I can't fail. This was the first time Evelyn had felt the weight of such responsibility. She was the only one who could cure everyone, and she didn't want to disappoint. No, she couldn't disappoint. Evelyn thought back to the old man. Despite his eccentric personality, he was quite funny. He would always crack jokes to her. She thought about the two children. Despite being mute, the boy was always curious. Despite being blind and despite the cold, the little girl always remained bubbly. Despite being so large, Reginald was silly. Despite being so annoying, Chloe was like a big sister. Thinking about all the people who relied on her, Evelyn knew that she had to continue down this path. Even if, in turn, it made her turn into a statue. Yeah, who cares about me? For once, I'm actually doing something. I'm crunch. Startled by the sudden crunch, Evelyn turned her head and rose to her feet. It wasn't long before a figure emerged, the wind sweeping through his hair and sending loose strands across his face. Stopping a few paces from Evelyn, Julian came to a halt. Ah, it's you. Seeing that it was Julian, Evelyn relaxed. You almost gave me a heart attack. She patted her chest. But soon, you need to stop. His voice echoed quietly across the surroundings. Quote. If you continue healing them, it won't be long until you turn into a statue.